Throughout this video, I'll be mentioning this vertical stack of farms that's typically used in multiplayer when you want to have a lot of farms and build compactly. What if I were to tell you that you can do this but just make one modification to it and get more corn per hour per farm? And why does that matter? Why do you want to have most corn per hour per farm possible? It means that the corn consuming buildings, the swine farms, stables, and mills, can have more corn in them and therefore not lose momentum. So not only does the quantity of farms matter, but of course their efficiency too. Because in some situations, you can have one less farm. So what if I were to tell you that all we'd have to do is remove these fields here, there, and just the same pattern all the way down? Crazy thought, huh? Fewer fields, more productivity. I'm going to first show the conventional one without removing those. As I'll be expressing throughout this video, the more you stack them vertically, if there's a lot of what I'm going to be calling red zone infractions, the more efficiency you're going to lose. This is a stack of 10, and I'm going to get to more of these and variations of this later to try to show you more efficient versions of this, but take a look at these numbers. But now we're going to take a look at this, and this means less fields, right? Your laborers have better things to do to place all those fields. Look at this, 74. See, it's going down a little bit, but it's still staying around 74 for average. Now we can go to the map editor and place some buildings and some farms and actually test out the productivity. How much corn a single farm, for example, is going to produce in 1 hour. Where we have an in for him and the serfs, or we put an auto feed script so no one has to eat. But just be able to see what is the maximum and what does it look like. How many fields are required and where the fields need to be. How compactly you can make it. Or maybe you'll have to form some unconventional building habits. I'll be providing a download link to this map in the video description. Well, basically, I'm going to provide this script in here. It doesn't start counting corn that is produced until the first half hour. And then it counts every hour from that point to give you the corn per hour. And it averages out each one as it goes to show you the average corn per farm per hour. And they also don't have to eat. That way the results you get are going to be pretty consistent. In order to save you time on your journey, I have been on a journey of my own, creating a tool in Microsoft Excel. This will save you a lot of time regarding doing that experimentation. I'll explain this in a minute. Before I do, I want to mention that I do have a link to this in the video description so you can download it and follow along. I made this tool because everything is pretty much random, which means you're going to have to resort to testing in the map editor to find out the efficiency of the farms. For example, with him going to fields, which fields he goes to, that's random. There's actually two random functions that one calls the other. I'll provide these two links in the video description as well. So this is the first one, and then this is the primary one. This one apparently uses a random number generator, but just so that you can search for these keywords of these function names in the source code to find out that it's random. Before I knew that, I actually did 10 30-hour trials of visits that he did to each field. I recorded data with a script that I wrote and combined it with Excel because there's no function for this even in the latest beta versions, so that I could see how many visits he did to each farm field. For example, this was trial 1, this was trial 2, and so forth. And this sheet I was showing you now is percentiles. For visual purposes, I just have it highlight the third and fourth or least visited quartiles, or the lesser preferred half. But all the numbers you see represent quartiles, so I can go through all 10 trials real quick to show you that it changes. And this is the percentages of visits in the 10 trials. And how long it takes the corn to grow is also random. There are 5 stages in the corn's growth cycle. Just place a farm field and use the scroll on your mouse or click on it. Stage 1, stage 2, 3, 4, and then it's ready to be harvested. But even the time in between when each of these happens is random. It varies. If this wasn't random, then it would at least make it so that the number of trials that you would use to test would be less to get more consistent numbers. But anyway, I'll provide a link to this in the video description as well. I'll call it different stages of corn growth. And for those who want to know more about the corn growth stages, the developers have another page. I'm going to provide a link to this as well. This describes the corn age. That's something that you have to take into account. And besides corn age that you have to take into account, there's this universal terrain pace, it's called, and it's initialized to 200. So with these three things might be a good start if someone wants to understand the source code behind that. So therefore, you're going to have to do numerous trials, because with one trial, it's not going to be good enough, because you might be lucky or unlucky, or you might be in the middle somewhere. You'll have to find out what the min, max, and average is, and then work from there. And so therefore, this spreadsheet tool that I made should be very useful for those who understand this and don't want to spend a lot of time in the map editor. I'll say it right now, but I'll talk about it later. I did 10 trials for every possible single farm that there can be. So the hard work had to be done, but it's already been done for you. Okay, first of all, what you have to do if you've never run a program in Microsoft Excel before, you have to go to File, Options, and then Trust Center Settings, and then click Macro Settings, and by default it might say something like this, but you need to bubble this in. So now you just click OK and OK, and that's it. There was a lot that went into me making this, and it wouldn't have been possible to do if I wouldn't have found this computer science paper to do part of the work, and partly a little bit of mathematical proof, and a lot of programming in Microsoft Excel and making spreadsheets that are almost three-dimensional, so to speak. I'll leave that for another video, should there be enough interest. And no, my tool doesn't look like this. It doesn't look like a regular Excel spreadsheet. What I'll first do is I'm going to load one of my pre-built plans for the Chinese map Romance of the Three Kingdoms. So you can see here I have farms in a way that you probably never built before. Some of these are the most efficient farms you can possibly have, and some aren't. But the distance between them, how many fields they have, the shapes that the fields are in, all that matters for farm efficiency. But what I'm going to do is I'm going to see how efficient this is according to this tool. In order to do that, all I have to do is go to Import, and then this is going to be the path to the previous map that you loaded. If you want to reload it without having to go browse for it again, you just click this button. And then it's going to ask you what player number you want to get a drawing of in Microsoft Excel. But I'm going to first just show you how the browse works, because we've already seen that. Go down and I'm going to find this one that we see here, and I'm going to say OK. And I'm player 1, so I'm going to say player 1. And for those who know scripting, I have it so that it does detect player 0 as player 1, okay? But I'm just talking about for everyone else that they see in the map editor, it says player 1. That's how I have it. Okay, so this town is this town, right? And this is actually an interactive tool regarding the farms. All the other buildings that are just blue and yellow, which are not farms, obviously there's really nothing you need to do with them in a farm efficiency tool. But first of all, what I want to do is I want to maximize my workspace. If you look to the left of the screen, there's this maximize workspace button. I'm going to double click on it so that I maximize my workspace. And then I'm going to right click on this green here to kind of zoom some. I can right click on any of these buttons up here and it's going to zoom close. If I right click on this army green here, it's going to zoom out a little, and then right click on this green, it's going to zoom out a little bit more. So now we can see things. Microsoft Excel, of course, has a zoom down here that you can make customized, but that's just to help you zoom quickly without having to use it. And just one last thing about the right click on the left margin here. If I right click on this margin, it's going to go up to the top and zoom up on these buttons here. But anyway, we see the stats. So expected corn per hour is 80.7. That's per farm. Now let me go and show you how to use the design sheet. The design sheet is to have any number of these images, and I don't know if you noticed, but if I left clicked on this, the image snaps to the grid. If I copy this and paste with Control C and Control V, I can have two farms overlap with each other, but I'll get to that in a minute. I'll just put that other one on the side for right now. What I want to do to use this is I just select all around, even the white parts of this image, and then I click overlap. And here it's actually a sheet, but it actually functions as a button. And let's just take a look at what the efficiency is for a single farm, and specifically the one that's typically used by itself. It's 15 farms or so. It's either this one or maybe that. So that's 79.18. That's the point. Or if I put over here, it's 77.9. So that's worse. Yeah, probably this is the one that people would typically use. Maybe Sato talks about. So 79.18 corn per hour for this farm. So what is the maximum it can be? I can double click on this. I'll get to these notes later, but when you want to improve the efficiency, you select around the entire farm, for example, like this entire area. And I'll explain what this means in a minute. But for right now, just know that it's definitely all the places that he can go and get corn very quickly. That's the main idea. Yeah, before I do that though, I first need to have some kind of road, and usually you will, because it's going to put fields even like on these roads here, so there's no way to even connect this building to your village. But anyway, so I'm going to double click this and say improve efficiency, select around here and press enter and wait. And this is one of the most efficient farms you can have, 81.85. So when I say one of the most efficient, that means that these other light greens also have a value of 4.53, like this one. Oh, let me right click on this. So right now 81.85. If I unclick that and I click that one instead, it's still 81.85. And what I'm doing is I'm using right clicks to do everything here. I'm using a double left click when I would pull this up, and I used a double left click on the maximize, and I'm going to show you consumers to double left click on that and double left click on the delete sheet to delete this sheet. So if I do that right now, you can, if you press yes, it will delete the sheet for you. Or Microsoft Excel, you can right click on this and say delete and then say delete. Either way you can delete the sheet. But anyway, so you got 81.85. So I'm going to rename this most efficient single farm. Even though there's going to be several of them, you can just do some mathematics to figure out how many possible most efficient farms you can have. And it's just with this road alone, you're going to have different paths. And let me call this most efficient farm 1. I'm going to hold down control and left click on this and drag it to make a copy. And I'm going to right click on the clear button to clear those. And I'm going to right click on this to check this, and then right click on that to clear the roads. Now I'm going to take the roads, and let's say if I were to put the roads straight down, what would happen then? If I double click on this again and say improve efficiency, select all around and press enter, what would the maximum efficiency be for this farm? 81.85 again, right? So we have one 81.85. We have another one. What about if we have the road coming from the right? Since this road is checked, I'm going to right click on the road to clear it. And what I'm going to do is just select this and right click to place some road. And I don't have to keep clearing the farm fields to do this. All I have to do is just open the tool again. It's going to automatically clear all of the fields that you have within a certain selections. And right now I'm selecting the entire thing, but you can select just this part of it right here and see what it's going to do. And of course it's going to add fields there because that's going to make it more efficient. These fields are right next to the door, so the closer the field is to the farmer, the better they are. The smaller these numbers are, which I'll get into later on in this video, but it's basically how many seconds it takes him to get there from the time he disappears from the window until he gets there. But anyway, let me go ahead and say improve efficiency and select around the entire thing and click OK and wait. 81.85 again. So we have 3 different type of road paths to the farm, and we still have 81.85. This is just a random fact, but if roads aren't required, you can have up to 84. It's just that much more if you can put fields right next to the door. But that's it. It doesn't go above 84 from all the tests that I've done. So we keep that in mind. One more time, I'm going to do this here, and I'm going to say standard single farm. And this one I'm going to clear these and right click this and clear those. And I'm going to select all of these and place these farm fields so that we can have this number available for the future. And this sheet that was created, this was actually the date and time. So it's September 1st, 2022 at 3:59:52 p, and I cut off the M. So basically it's going to create a new sheet with a unique name that it'll never make again. That way in Microsoft Excel, if there could be issues that if a sheet's named the same name, then you're going to have problems, but it's never going to happen. But you can right click on here and rename this to whatever you want for later. But that's how I have that convention. I can left click on design sheet and go back, or come back here and nothing will happen. But if I click on overlap, then it's going to create another sheet like this. So now I have 2 sheets, one where I already modified, right? It didn't delete it, and then a new one that's the exact same farm that is currently highlighted here. Now there's 2 things that can go wrong with making this sheet, and that is if you left click on the image, that is if you select the image and then you do this, this is going to give you this error message. And another error message that you can get is if you left click and you don't select on anything. If you left click here and you click on overlap, it's going to give you another type of error message. It just tells you what's the problem. You have to actually click on the cells around the image or images if you have two farms like this and you want to see it snap to the grid automatically. So you have to select around them, then click overlap. So let's go take a look at this sheet where we have two farms. Basically, let me go back to the design sheet. I don't have zoom in stuff on this sheet like I do on the other one, so I'm just going to zoom in manually. But these two images are the same exact color and they're transparent, so we can kind of see the overlap. It's that purple and this other kind of purple and the dark blue and these two dark red. So the idea is when you have multiple farms that they overlap when they're close. I know it's hard to tell from this sheet, but if we go to this sheet, we can see that the farms are just one space apart, which is the minimum, horizontally speaking. That's what I mean. And vertically, one is 3 down from the other. But there's this overlap, all the overlap that you can see in this sheet if you pay attention to the transparency is made red, and all the tiles that are not overlap are green. And I'm just going to delete this sheet. This is just a sheet to scare you at first. But anyway, with this one I can maximize the workspace, and maximize workspace will be remembered when you go from tab to tab. All of these were maximized. So like for example, since they're all maximized, I'm going to unmaximize this one. You go here, this one's maximized, so it's going to remember which sheet was maximized. But I'll be showing more of this improve efficiency tool later. Why do I have a shape like this for the farm? That's because this represents what the farmer is going to pay attention to, what his range of focus is for fields. And if you do this test for finding out all of this farmland that you see is within the farmer's reach, if you put a row that he doesn't do all of them, you're going to see this radius form first. So that's definitely what he prefers. That's hard evidence, besides it being mentioned by the developers in the source code. Right here in the source code, which I will provide a link to, and I will label it near tiles and far tiles. It wrote right here in this comment that he prefers the near tiles instead of the far ones. When some of you may be saying, well, I know a farmer that goes far out of that red radius, and I agree, this is the full radius. So what you see here, the red corresponds to the red here and the blue with the blue. But then we have the yellow, which is called the far tiles, as you can see in the image here. Basically, you can find this radius by sticking a farmer on a map like this, and a map where he doesn't have to eat, and just put fields all around him like this. I guess I'll show you. It's pretty cool to see this. Drawing out a bigger square than what that is, and let's see if he can fill it in, no matter how much time he has. I have to be careful that when I place these, I don't accidentally double click to plant corn. Okay, so that's clearly bigger than that. I'm just going to cut a path for the farm building and put one there with him. I have the simple auto feed script in here, so he won't have to eat. Maybe I can fill some more in down here. But he collected some corn, but that's all he's going to collect, so he's going to go out of what he prefers because he's so bored he doesn't know what to do. Two hours, he's still not done planting every single one. 2.5 hours. Okay, he's done it 2.5 hours. That looks like this. Another way you can look at it, this is 10 tiles from that tile that he's walking on. That's what the full radius is, and then it kind of makes a circular path. What I learned is that when you go to Ray's GitHub page like this, there is no mention of farms, which means to me that nothing was changed since R6720, or even some of this dates even before that, like R5503, so it's rather old code. But anyway, this is a link I'm going to provide in the video description, but I'm going to call this main function, and it's going to pull up to line 129 as you see here. But this is where the code for the farmers and The stonecutters, all of them that they mine, it's where they begin. What that means is that from this point you can just search for function names that they call, and you can search for function names that they call, and so forth. And mining range, that's something that I do have a link to, so I can show that real quick. And I'll call this mining range in the video description. But you can see here that for the farmers it's 10. And it says farmer, so if I do a video on vineyards, it might be the same because it's a farmer, obviously. So what does mining range mean? The only way I could get 10 is if I numbered the tiles like this. And I was trying to get them to be the distance from the door tile, but it didn't work out because this is an asymmetrical circle. It's like an egg. But what the mining radius of 10 really means, it doesn't mean that exactly. It means that assume that each one of these squares measures one of a unit distance. Suppose that our destination is this tile. What is the distance to get there? Should we start from the door tile? But you can see the difference between this number and this number is 1, and it's the same for all of them. So from 2 to 11, that's 10. Sure, that matches this image I made, right? But what if this is my destination? Again, starting from the door tile. I count 1, and then the farmer, what he does when he walks, he actually goes like this. He goes at a diagonal, and then he goes straight up. This is 7 tiles distance, and then that's 8. But what does this represent? Well, it's simply the difference between these two numbers. So that's 1.4. And in fact, since each of these tiles are perfect squares, the diagonal is going to be square root of 2, isn't it? So this is an approximation of the square root of 2. So the total distance from our starting point to our destination is going to be 8 plus 1.4. And in the source code in this link, which I will call tile distances, and I'll bookmark it on this line in particular, I'll pull this right up, which is 9.4. So this distance is less than 10, but if we were to go one more tile, then it would be 10.4, it would be over 10. So it's less than or equal to 10, basically. But you can see just in this view that all of the purple squares are exactly a distance of 10 away from the door tile. In short, we have to consider the way he walks. But in short, yes, this is the full radius. And you can read the caption of this image that I made. And even though in the caption of this image I mentioned that it's 10 seconds here, which represents part of the work cycle, the developers called it, and the one above it is 10.5. Maybe they rounded down or something, but for the sow cycle, when I was counting it, and I counted it using a script, I would slow down the script to 1/10 of a second pace, and I counted the number of ticks. So that's why I know I'm right. Based off of that, it's 10.5 seconds when he sows, but just 10 seconds when he reaps. But here for the farmer, in this function here, for find a different resource, so once he wants to go look for some new corn, plant, or harvest, it says the work cycle is 10 for the farmer. So I'll provide a link to this in the video description. I'll call it something like the work cycle. I actually made this by using some advanced features in Excel along with working with the script because there was no such thing to test it in the game. And I'm talking about in a relatively recent beta version. Basically these numbers here, the smaller they are means the closer the tile is to the farm, and the smaller the value is, the better it is to choose that tile for a farm. So in these images here, there's a star for some of the blue. I did this on purpose because that means that these stars are the least valuable of the blue. You want to, ideally for a farm to have maximum efficiency, you want to have all blue. And you can't have all of the blue, you have to have only part of them, 16 of them as a matter of fact. And that doesn't include some that are going to be used up by the road tile. You have to put road tiles on some of the blue, otherwise you won't be able to connect the building. So you still have to choose a few of these starred blues that are least valuable. But with this way, when they overlap, it just tried to make them overlap, the ones that are least valuable, so that if the efficiency is lost with those specific tiles, they're less valuable, so that means that less efficiency is lost, even though that it's going to be quite a bit of efficiency lost because these blue tiles or the ideal tiles, as we've seen in the tool earlier, that you can select when you double click on one of the farms from here, then place ideal. So that's why I have the starred blue amongst the blue. But in these spreadsheets, I don't have it blue, I have it the bright green, so just take note of that. But for overlapping in the design sheet, I thought that blue and red, because they're colors that almost everybody can see, that they should be used for visual purposes with this kind of activity. I have 7 starred blues because they all have the same number that's on here, and they are the worst of the blue. to choose. They're the highest number. They're the farthest away from the farm. So they're all equally as bad, but this kind of makes it easy that when you're moving these images here, you can see, well, if I overlap this one with that one, let it be the star blues and not the other blues, for example, just to kind of speed things up for you. Click here, it's going to snap. And when you get this Excel workbook, it's going to come with these images. All you have to do is just copy it and then paste it. And in here, I think you would just probably should choose this if you want to use your right click of your mouse to do the pasting, but just Control C and Control V is better, of course. And when you get a lot of these images and you say, okay, I have this, I like these farms, I already did a sheet on this, I'm going to move it over and I want to do some more, so I'm going to copy this and I'm going to start over again. Then after a while, you're going to have a whole bunch of images. I have this that if you double click it, it's going to select all the images for you so you can move them over. And if I just go back to this one, you can right click on the background anywhere and make road tiles. If it's near a farm, as in it's in this radius of the farm, then it's going to put farm fields if it's checkbox for farm fields. But whether there's nothing really to be checked around here. These buildings don't have a check mark of their own, these non-farm buildings. And so wherever you right click, it's going to erase this. It's going to erase it if you right click it once and then right click it again. As you saw, it erases it. But the tools in here, when they place fields and when they improve efficiency and all, they're not going to affect the non-farm buildings or the road tiles around them. So it's going to keep all that the same. As in, I'm talking about the tools that place fields for you. I'm not even talking about import. I'm talking about, like, I clear this, and then let's say I want to double click on this and say improve efficiency, and I select all around here. It's not going to override the road tiles or anything like that. It's user friendly. But anyway, I can right click on these to remove them. But another thing is, for bulk selection, you can select all of them like this and so forth. But this, I can maybe copy it and paste. I can't. And that's another thing to mention, is that you can't undo certain actions when you're in these sheets, because this is an interactive sheet in Microsoft Excel, and that's how they work. I can get rid of this row. I don't know how that happened in this one and this one. Okay, let's talk about what these numbers mean. So first of all, when I look at the farm here, there's an order triple. The left is the minimum corn per hour that this farm in particular will have per hour. The middle one is the average, and the right one is the max. And so what this minimum here is the average of all the minimums of all the farms, and similarly for the average corn and maximum corn. Now, expected corn, this is a more realistic value of what you should expect. I find that when I compare this to the game itself, that the amount of corn that I get per hour that I see in the game itself versus what you see here is a little bit more than minimum corn, but less than the average corn. It's never at the minimum or below the minimum from what I've seen. So I have a little formula in here. It's basically very close to a regular average of these two, but it's going to be a little bit higher than that average. And this is the percentage of expected efficiency. This means we assume that the maximum efficiency is 81.85 corn per hour. That's the most it can possibly be for any number of farms or just one farm. And this is 99.36 instead of 100%, because this expected corn value, when you combine multiple farms, is going to be slightly less than what the ideal is, because unless you space them out this much. So for example, if we just play with this in Microsoft Paint, so I have one, I have another one, and I would try to do something like this, where I would place one farmer's far tiles. That's what I called it here, because that's what the developers called it. They don't overlap with the other one at all. They can be like this, like a puzzle piece, where they fit together, but they don't actually overlap at all. That's when this farm will be able to be 81.85 corn per hour on average. But anything closer, every once in a while, he's going to go to another field that's out of this green that you see here. He's going to do it. But with this tool, the basic idea, the less they overlap, the more efficient they're going to be. You don't want to have them spaced out too much, so there's going to be some overlap. But obviously, this shows you where you can place it, that there is no overlap, at least with the near tiles. Talking about the near tiles, of course there's going to be overlap with the far tiles unless you have farms that far apart. You know, you can count how many spaces this is to have them this far apart. You know, we can count across what's the distance between this and this. It's huge, and it's got to be vertically and horizontally. It can't just be one or the other. But overall, anything that's 99% or more is pretty much ideal, and the standard, just as a comparison, is 95.88%. But let me just fill this in somewhat. Again, I can select multiple cells and right click to fill it in bulk. So I have a right click here on the clear to clear that up real quick, and that clear is only going to, like if I put farm fields on this farm here, you see this one, when I clicked here, this farm changed. This green, it's green because it's not shared between this farm, so it might look kind of confusing. They're like, which farm does this green belong to? I don't know. You can see what farm's number changed. That's the farm it belongs to, but the red, it belongs to both of them. Okay, it's the intersection of their near tile radii. But what I was trying to say is that if I have fields here and fields there, and I clear here, it's only going to clear the ones with this belonging to this farm, as it should be. All with right clicks. This is all right clicks. I'm not doing any left clicking. So that should make it very simple. The only left clicking you have to do is when you want to select to add farm fields in bulk, for example. Let me say this one final thing that when you see this, you might be like, what? But if I put a farm field here and a farm field here, it's all okay. But if I come here to this sheet and I would choose all of them, you're going to get 3 question marks, and this is the only time you're going to get this. This farm I know is impossible because you have to connect the farm to the rest of your village, obviously. And it saved me about an hour, at least an hour, of time when I was making the table, and probably a couple thousand lines in the table that you're not even seeing here. I'll get to that if you're wondering. Since I mentioned, I might as well show it. But this is a sheet that's hidden. This is a lookup table that was the result of that research. There's 4 columns. The first column is the sum of the distances between the farm tiles and the farm. You can see that I have a sheet called model in here as well that was hidden. But basically this is this verbatim. So the left column is the sum of the distances. And then the other ones are, as you can see here, the average, min, and max. So the average, min, max for each case, for each unique, that's what I had to prove with mathematics. It's the unique sum that represents many cases each. Even though I have 18,000, there were a lot of cases, and I'm kind of getting too much detail, but basically I have this spreadsheet here in the background working to simulate a single farm. What I basically did was I found a way to test every possible case, and I tested every possible case 10 times, and each test was for 6 hours. That gave me these numbers that I have here. So that when I simulated all that, that's for a single farm. But I found recently, when I resumed this project after about 4 months, and I programmed this extra feature where I originally had this by itself, but now I made it so that you can have any number of farms next to each other like this. I tested it quite a bit, and it seems to be pretty accurate if you consider the expected corn percentage. But this is an impossible case. But even though something like this may not be impossible, there is actually some other legitimate case that is equivalent to this. Well, maybe not this one because this is too high. 81.85 is the maximum. But like if I would do this, something like that, there is an equivalent case to this, which means that you can connect the farm to your village. So I couldn't remove those, but I knew that this was a case that was never going to happen. So let me show you another part of this. I'll go to this sheet here where they have multiple farms, and I'm going to right click on this green to zoom out some. Let's see how many farms I have here. So how many buildings can they support? How many corn consumers? Well, let's take a look. Based on this corn per hour, if I right click on here to zoom in on these, and I can right click on any of these again, as I mentioned, I can double click on consumers, and this is going to, it already pulled in the data from that sheet we were just looking at to see how many corn per hour we have. And all these cells here are protected, and all of these sheets that are protected in this workbook, all you have to do is go to, and I can briefly go back real quick, and it's going to go back to this sheet. But let me go to double click on maximized here, and you go to review and you say unprotect sheet, and you type in ABC lowercase, all lowercase ABC. All of the sheets that are protected, you can unprotect them and make some edits as needed, but I don't think you would really need to. Maybe consumers, if the remake in the future changes that the seconds a mill takes to run is not 43 seconds, but it changes, or swine farms or staples and so forth. But these values I have it that you can't change it so that you don't change it by accident, but these we can. So currently right now, basically with this saying it's okay. And let me left indent this. I don't know how that became center, just for y'all in the future. But right now it's saying that based on, if I go back to the sheet that we're looking at, based on these farms, I can support 1 mill, 1 swine farm, and 1 stable, no problem. If I increase that to 2 staples, it says not sufficient. But if I like delete a swine farm, then 2 stables and 1 mill, okay, so you get the idea. That's basically it. If I were to remove the mill and put a swine farm, would it be able to support it? Yes. Now a mill, if I add a mill, would it be able to support it? No, right? So we were at the same place. But now, let's say that I have 2 swine farms and I delete that. Will it still be no? Yeah. Okay. I increased that. What I'm trying to do is get it so that it says that it can't support it. And so what I can do is actually this. I can double click this to go back to the sheet, and I can the check mark on this farm here, and you can select around a farm and then use the scroll on your mouse to zoom in just on that. That's a little trick in Excel to zoom in. But I can right click on this clear to clear these fields. Now I can right click on this gray to go back here and go to consumers, and now all of a sudden it says not sufficient because I removed the fields for one of the farms. Well, let me go back again and go find that farm, and let me just slowly add some fields. Let me make this a conventional type of farm. If I have road and building and stuff, I would probably want to do something like this, right? And if I don't want to have any fields above here, or maybe just some, but let me just briefly just right click on that gray there and then go to consumers, and it says it's okay. So those few fields that we added is enough to tip the scale that the farms that I have in that build can support these buildings, assuming that all the farms are producing corn and all these buildings are built and running, of course. So let me go back, and it'll be very particular, but let me just remove like these two because it's kind of the end of the farm. People typically don't want fields there. Let me right click on this gray and go to consumers, and it's still okay. Let me erase these two. It's still okay. So I'm removing 2 more. Still okay. So it's like, what do I have to do? Still okay. It looks like this didn't need many fields at all, did it? Still okay. Let me remove this one. So it's just 1. Now it says not sufficient. So what does this tell us? This tells us that, I mean, everyone knows that they say, okay, a stable takes 2 farms. So we have 2 stables, that's 4 farms. And we have a swine farm, that's a farm and a half. So 5.5 farms is enough to power these 3 buildings in theory, right? And we started with 6 farms, but now we figure that we really didn't even need one of them at all. So we have 5 farms that can pretty much power these 3 buildings. These farms are so efficient, you only need 5 of them, pretty much. You don't even need the 6th one, because you would usually have to round up. If it says 5.5, I mean, it almost supports it. You know, it's crazy. That's something about efficient farms versus regular farms that, like, we can do a comparison here. Let me go to the design sheet and let me copy these images here and put them like this, a distance of 2 apart. There's 4 tiles between the 2 rows of farms. So I'll just do what I did again one more time, something like that. I can zoom out a little bit and click overlap. Okay, so now we have some red, and I'll explain that in a minute, but for right now, let me just double click on one of these farms and say place ideal as a start. So that's going to place fields on the green, light green, that's what I mean. That's the fields, because this is another green, but the fields closest to the farm are light green. The red represents the intersection between these 2 farms. As we've seen in the design sheet, when we came over here and we selected this, and we can see there's some overlap in these transparent images I have. That's kind of the purpose of them, so you can see the overlap ahead of time. But this sheet itself is going to show you the overlap, so you don't really need it per se, but the design sheet is like your own map editor, so to speak. Instead of having to import it in from a map, if you don't do a pre-build in the map editor, and you want to use this or use them both, it doesn't matter. They're both available to you. But this darker red means that it's an intersection or an overlap between 3 or more farms. Each of these farm fields, if we were to place farm fields there, so I should say each of these tiles. So that's actually what I showed at the very beginning of the video. That's what you want to avoid. Let me just temporarily do this, put some on there, and let me double click on this and say remove fields between more than 2 farms. So that's going to remove the fields from these automatically for you. And so what I mean by that is, like, if I zoom out all the way and I select around all of this, since these checkboxes for the farms are checked, we're going to be placing fields. If I were to right click on this and I'd right click, anywhere around it's going to place the row tiles instead. A quick way to put fields into a formation like this is to right click on the field, of course, and then select just this part that we want to put the fields and right click. You have to wait, but it's filling it in. Now we right click on the row tiles and then select across and then click to put a row down in bulk. Just a few more times and that's it. This is just a demonstration of to use that tool to remove farm fields that are shared between 3 or more farms, and I think it will only be 3. I don't know if you can ever have farms close enough to each other that they will all share one. I mean, I guess you can, but a realistic build, maybe, if it's a really bad thing or you want to stick an extra farm and not have any fields for it. But all I'm trying to show you is just now we can click this. And before I do, let me just show you right now, it's showing that the expected corn is 71.53. Now this is kind of grayed out, and that's because we have some farm fields on the red tiles, and that means that if you have any fields on the red tiles, the result you get here is not going to be entirely reliable. It's going to be a little bit off. Sometimes it's going to show less expected corn than what it actually would be in the game itself, or more. It depends on the number of farms you have, what formation they're in, how many fields you have, and so forth. But I'll talk about why later, but just keep that in mind. So when it's grayed out like this, that means that the results you see, I'll still let you see them, but these results are not entirely reliable. Only should you have farm fields on the dark green or the light green, or I should say bright green, for you to have relatively reliable results. But anyway, what I'm trying to say is it's 71.53. Now if I double click on this and I say remove the tiles that are on at the intersection of 3 or more farms, now all of a sudden I have 71.91. But anyway, so we have 6 farms now. Let's go to the consumers and see if it's going to be okay. It says it's okay. Now let's go back to the sheet. Now the theory is that we need 5.5 farms. That's the theory in order to power this. We have 6. So let's say we have just half of another farm. Let's see if we can remove some of these ones that are less effective because they're bigger numbers. And all of these have 27 fields, so half of 27 is 13.5. We have a total of 25 fields for this farm in particular. You can see that, right? So like this one has 23 fields and so forth. It's very intuitive. But if we were to remove, I don't know, let's just go take a look and see if it still can support it. Yeah, it says it's still okay. Let me remove some of these because these are inefficient. And right click on here and double click on this. It says it's still okay. And remember that with this one, it says it's not sufficient, but it was only 2 farm fields from 6 farm away. So it's 5 farms and 2 fields of another one instead of 5.5, right? So if we would come here, it says it's okay. So that's all it took. It was just 2 fields of the 6th farm. This one though, if we were to, therefore, just to make this quick, I have 11 fields now. Let's go take a look to see if it can still support it. It still can. 11 fields in the scope of this farm. Let me remove those. So it's just 7 fields. Not okay all of a sudden. So how about that? So with this farm setup, there are still 7 fields within his closest reach. And how we know what fields they are? Well, you can go to the design sheet and we can see this. So all the fields that are in this red are fields that are closest to him that he prefers to go to. So with this previous example, when we have efficient farms, we only need 5 of them and 2 fields of another to support it exactly. So in other words, practicality speaking, we only need 5 of these efficient farms to power 2 stables, 1 swine farm. But now we're seeing the conventional And I'm going to rename this to shorten it conventional 6. Yeah, but 7 isn't enough. Okay, let me remove this one so that it's just 6. And then we remove this one, and that one also affects it. That one, and that one. Okay, so now this one only has 13 fields. Let me add one there so that it's 14, and it doesn't increase the number of fields that are in reach of this farm that we're looking at. And let's just add 2 fields that are very efficient to this farm and see if this is sufficient. And just for the sake of it, let's add one over here so that this is 15 fields. So now the 6th farm will have 2 fields. And right click on this and let's go see if it can support our consumers, and it can't. So this stuff matters, guys. It matters. I know you can always stick an extra farm even if you don't have enough fields for it. You can just stick a farm like right over here or something, or you know what I'm saying? You can always do something. Now how about this? How about we compare the conventional stack, let's say of 6 this time, versus 6 of the most efficient farms. And now these farms are not most efficient, they're very close to it. Not quite. I need to remove these fields here. Let's just see how many pigs will be made in the first hour or so. Or we can go to an hour and a half, why not? This is a very quick run. Okay, so I'm clicking on the top one, the most efficient farms are close to being most efficient. We're at 140 pigs. And the bottom is 129. This is the second trial, the same circumstances, just to see if there's any variance here. Okay, this time there's 144 pigs there and 134 here, but still the same difference, about 10 pigs. For the same amount of farms. That's really what you're looking at. I just counted it's a little bit more expensive, build it this way, but it's up to you if you want to have the buildings that it feeds in the center or not. So if you're thinking about like a 4-hour co-op map game, which is possible these days, some of the maps out there, that's a lot more lost. So with all that being said, all I'm trying to say is that this is going to save you a lot of time, and I actually put in the work. It was 180,000 tests, technically, to test all possible cases for a single farm. But when you space them out sufficiently and you consider their overlap, then I can apply that to multi-farm efficiency analysis. But the research that I did, which involved the computer science paper and programming a 3-dimensional spreadsheet, and also it was about 9 hours of running 180,000 tests on a single farm. That was some serious work, and that was to get reliable results backed up by science and also mathematics. But the statistics that you get if you select even on one of these red, I cannot guarantee that is going to be correct. I'll mention it later, but the statistics for this is a little bit on the pessimistic side. And I believe it is true if you select on the red also, but I cannot make any guarantees. It might vary from case to case. But the point is, throughout this video, I'll be mentioning that you can only put farm tiles on the green, but not on the red anywhere. And if you obey that rule, then the statistics that you see here, it is my promise to you that it's a very good approximation of the efficiency of the farms. But yeah, just that one thing. If you overlap farms in here, and you come over here and you see that they're dark red, don't put farm fields on the dark red unless your farms are in such a position where you have to put some if you don't have at least 15 fields, and I would say ideally 16 for each farm. Then that's the only time that I would give you approval to put fields on those dark red tiles. I mean, just compare all the green that's in here. Just ignore the red just for a second and look at all the green that's available for these farms and compare that with this. I don't think it can get worse than this for the farms that are in between. If they're not on the ends, and of course if this is on the end of the map that you just have farm fields up through here, it's going to be really bad. Let's just see what it would do. 70.87 expected corn. And I should take these 2 off and put farm fields on them instead. So that changes it to 70.92. It improves it. Let's compare that to the game just real quick while I'm mentioning it, to compare with the previous stack. This is the most consistent I've ever seen. I'll give it that. But that's probably just with this trial. But I mean, extremely consistent with the numbers. But it's pretty bad. We'll see later that I'll show you setups that are 10 more corn per hour per farm. Let me go to the map editor and let me create a new map, and let me just put some farms so we can do it in here just to see. And let's say we have the same, so it's 3 beneath. something like this. Yeah, let me just have 6 like I had last time. And I don't know how many fields it is per farm. It's really hard to tell, but when you use the Excel spreadsheet, it's easy to tell, right? And I guess we could put all between them like this, something like that. But the big problem with this, I'll tell you right now, the big problem with this is the horizontal distance between the farms. The closer they are horizontally, it's going to be drastically worse for efficiency. So the vertical stack here is actually pretty good. It's not, I mean, it's not great by any means, but right now it's much better than what it usually is, because these usually are here in multiplayer, but I just have this tool that you can just remove those and the efficiency is going to be better. The only time that you would want to have farm fields on these tiles if you have nowhere else to put fields and some of your farms only have 14 or fewer fields. They don't have at least 15. It's worth it, in other words, to put fields in those areas, but otherwise don't ever do it. Just never do it. I mean, it's less work for your laborers to do, right? Less time to build everything. Okay, but anyway, let me save this now as, let's call it AAA. Okay, so now I'm going to import it in from the spreadsheet. Import. New AAA. And coming to this sheet here, which you'll never usually see, this is basically where the information will be. When this import tool basically parses the .dat files and the maps, it's going to put things in here and then grab it from that point and do stuff with it. But it didn't pick up anything. It didn't pick up any houses, any farms at all, when it should be. How about if we put a storehouse for another player? To have 2 players, maybe that's something. It's something wrong with mine. Let's try it. Yeah, that's it. That's actually it. I need to fix that, and I'll fix that before I upload this video. But okay, so we want player 1. Yeah, okay, so whew, okay, it works. Okay, so let's go ahead and let's see if these farms can support the swine farm and the 2 stables. Yep. If I were to, firstly, let me go here. It says it's 70.07. So we remember from the vertical stack that it was what? I mean, it has this assistance. So without this assistance, if I were just to put this back and fill this in and remove that, just make it the default. Well, not that. I need to remove these. Yep. And I need to put these back and these. Yep, we have 71.53, and again, this is grayed out, so it means it's not reliable. It's not going to be the exact result. I'm pretty sure this is probably around 74-ish or so, I'm thinking, or 73, something like that for 6. And in here, we're seeing that it's at 73.121. And I can rename this sheet to conventional 6 vertical. And this, I'm not sure if it's conventional or not, but I'll just call it conventional 6 horizontal. But this one is 70.07, so this is less efficient than that by default. Now, this is 71.53 without the help. With the help, if I remove those, it becomes 71.91. So 0.4 of a corn per hour better according to this, even though it's not right. Let's see how much more. So 70.07. If we were going to remove those, 71.63, look at that. You see, so with a build like this was a bigger help. You want to have fields not in these areas. I mean, none of these farms are lacking fields by any means. When you think they are, they're not. They all have at least 17 fields that they prefer to go to. And so maybe the idea with this is that this has 33 fields. If you would remove some of the fields around him and around those that have more fields, so like this one for example, it's really close to this farm, but it's one that if you remove it, right now it's at 71.63. If I remove that one, it's going to go up to 73.84. That's insane, because this tile right here is like really bad for this farm because it's really far away from him. So if you remove that, it's not going to really hurt this guy too much, but it really helps the average. and it's less fields to place. So just think like that when you import a map and compare farms and all. Even though this isn't exactly accurate, it's still going to show when you improve the efficiency regardless. But I'll show some examples later on the video and show you, compare it to the actual game to show you how close this spreadsheet can be should you not put fields on the dark red or the brighter red at all, just on the bright green and the darker green. Okay, so briefly, 2 other things to mention about how to use this. Well, actually 3 things, and one of them I should have used in the example earlier, but basically if you want to get a zoom to fit really quickly, all you have to do is double left click on any of the cells in this column except for buttons, which of course is going to do something when you double click on them. So you can double click on any of them to achieve this result, the zoom to fit, except for the lead sheet, maximize workspace, and consumers. If I double click on this, for example, it's going to be zoomed out some, but it's especially when you use the design sheet, maybe not import so much, but when you use the design sheet, it's going to zoom to fit pretty well. You'll definitely be able to see the entire workspace. That's what I'm saying in one double click. You can notice that there are 5 squares to the left here of margin, and there are more than 5 here, but basically when you go to the design sheet, you can change that number here. If you import it in, it's going to be a little bit different. The margins may not be exactly 5. There'll be more than 5 if they're not 5. They're never going to be less than whatever number you have here. That's pretty much guaranteed, I think. And the reason why you would want to have a margin of some kind is if you want to just draw in here, like you want to draw a swine farm. So let me go to maximize to get it back, and let me just hold on. Like let's say if I wanted to draw a swine farm like right here. This is Microsoft Excel. There you go, right? You can draw it in. So if the building were, if you wanted to draw up here and this was the top of the spreadsheet, you couldn't draw it. You need some extra space. So I have, just as an assumption, you have maybe 5 to the top and left. But another thing in here, let's just see, this one right here will maximize this workspace. That's what that button is for. And I have here the sheet password. It's the same sheet password for all of them, as I mentioned, if you want to modify these spreadsheets. But another thing is if you press the alternate F11 key, this code is going to come up. Basically what you want to do is double click on color settings. And in here I have RGB or red, blue, green color shades. If this window doesn't pop up for you, if you just see this, press Control R to pull this up to get to the A color settings menu. And your screen is going to be white. It's not going to be pink or purple, whatever this is. This is actually not the color I like to program with, but that's another story of how it got like this, and I'd have to change it back to what I had it. But this is as close to the default, at least, color scheme that is the one that I like. Anyway, so the color of the background, that's in these sheets here, so that's this gray. And I'm just going to X this to zoom to only see what I need to. Color of the grid lines is this purple, which is also the color of this too. They're the same, so if you want to change that, you can. The color of the ideal tiles. So let me clear this by right-clicking on clear. The ideal is these light or bright green. The non-ideal, non-shared tiles, that's these. And they're non-shared because they're not red. Shared or overlapping are red. And there's no possibility that there can be shared tiles in this particular sheet because there's only one farm. And even though you don't need it, if you scroll on right around here, you can see that there's only one farm. There's actually a table here, but these columns are hidden. It's a table full of data that makes all these clickings and colorings of these farms possible. But anyway, this color is clearly a green, and this one is too. Color of shared tiles, that's the bright red, and this is the darker red that we've seen earlier. Now color of the farm building, this is almost black. That's this. Here you can change that. You can change the farm building font, which is I currently have it at white, as you can see. Then the color of the clear button is white, as you can see, and then the font of the clear button is black. So you can change those, and then you can change the tile of the other buildings like this is blue. And this is important because if you choose to draw a building yourself in here, like I drew this one, but it's not in the same color as the ones that are the colors that are from the import, then when you double click on these and you want to improve efficiency or place ideal fields, it's going to override those if they are in the green of any kind, either of the greens. It's going to override those buildings and mess it up. So it's important that you like the color, if you want to change it to something else besides blue and yellow, you change it through here so that the program will recognize it and not override it with fields. Keep it there, so to speak. So this is the yellow for that tile where the coordinates of the building are in the map editor or in the game, and this is that blue. Now, I don't have one with grape fields. Let me go ahead to import and go to maps and import this one. And let me import player 15, for example, in the map Romance of the Three Kingdoms. I wonder if this one has grape fields. It might. Yeah, it does. So you can see the grape fields here. So that's the color for them. Not the pattern, just the color, just the purple. Now the farm field, you can change that too. The main color is going to be the lighter brown, and the darker brown is going to be the pattern color. But the main color is the lighter brown. And I have a suggested color here if you want to alternate brown for the main color for the fields. It's a little bit lighter. It was hard to find this. One that's easy on the eyes and still works with this background. I can temporarily just show you real quick. Basically, I can copy this, come here and paste this. And if I put an apostrophe, it's going to comment it out. That's how it works in VBA code, this is called. And I can now place a farm field here, and you can see the color difference. So it's good. If you like that one, you can use that instead. But this more like goldish color, I think, looks better, maybe. So I'm going to just press Ctrl-Z twice in order to get it back. So when I put it back now, it's normal again. But anyway, that's it. That's all you can really customize from this simple module. I have that in there to help you customize some of the colors at least. Now, if you go look at any of the other modules and you want to learn VBA for any reason or see how I did this, and you're a programmer and you want to just learn this a little bit, I made a huge effort to try to make this very easy to comprehend. Coded some of the things like for states and actions, especially states. I coded stuff like this where the property is a string, so when you call this function and it says this farm's clear button, it literally reads like a sentence. And this is the farm index. That's what this number is, but this is this farm's near tiles. You know, just literally like a sentence. So for personal use, or maybe do some freelancing, it might be a good idea to learn from me or from other people. And although I didn't say it, this is player 15 that I just showed you. So I'm going to load the original map again just to show you player 15, and because I think I might have touched something, or if I didn't, it doesn't matter. So I'm going to zoom in on this farm here. As you can see in the game, the majority of the fields are above the farm. But the problem is, go to the design sheet, we can see that the near tile radius is just a little bit above the farm, and that's it. That's the end of it. So the rest of it is going to become far tiles. And in my research, I didn't do all the far tiles by any means. I only have a few near tiles that have the same value as some far tiles. And we can see that right now if I just temporarily unhide the model sheet. These yellow here have the same value as some of the near tiles. And so I have it that should they not somehow use the near tiles with these values, then if they select some far tiles with these values, then it will register just to have a little bit of the far tiles without any extra effort, and I should say time more than effort. So I have that there, but I'm just going to hide it again. Please don't delete it. You unhide it to view it. Don't delete it by accident, otherwise it's going to destroy this tool. But I left it there for you to see it, should there be some people who are interested. Let me go back to the design sheet. I want to move them aside, so an easy way is just to grab these images like this and then double click here and say select all pictures and move them over. I want to do another stack. This time I want to stack still neatly vertically, but I want to have them so that they don't overlap this much, like right here. So they're 5 tiles apart instead. So this is quite a bit, but this is enough to stick a building of 3 width in between them. And I'm going to put them the same amount of space vertically. Okay, let's check this out. We can see here that we have quite a bit of room. And as a matter of fact, I was actually doing this on purpose. The most efficient farm actually stacks very well vertically when you have it spaced out this much. Or even a little bit less if you would have it, even the farms a little bit closer, it's still significantly more efficient than the conventional multiplayer vertical stack. Alright, so I'm just going to do that. I'm going to fill it in, just all 10 of them like this, because I can. It's the exact same pattern, and the red zone is where the road is going to be. I can just even do that. I forgot how user friendly I made this. But the road is just going to be, it's going to cost more road. 16 is actually the best number of fields. Not only does it help with efficiency when you have multiple farms, but it's actually the most efficient farms are 16 fields. Okay, that just took a minute. We have all 10 set up now. What does the expected say? It says 81.33, so that is almost 100% efficiency. So they don't have to be this far apart to have almost 100% efficiency. This field formation in particular is very good, and it happens also to be the most efficient single farm there is. An easy way I remember to do this is I just count to 4. So it's farm 1, 2, 3, 4. Okay, let's test this beast. Another hazard when you want to manually do these kind of tests in the map editor is that when you place the farm fields, if you double click it by accident, it's going to partially have the corn grown, and that's going to throw off your results. But okay, we're at the first hour now, and it is at 80.8. Now it's 80.15 instead of, it's basically instead of 7, it's 15, and we're talking about a decimal here. So that's very, very close, right? Didn't really do any magic here. It looks like it's increasing now because I mentioned that this spreadsheet is a little bit pessimistic, which explains why that the most efficient farm isn't 100%. According to this, it's 99.36. Yeah, much more efficient. It's instead of 76, it's 81 I should say. And 76 was significantly more efficient than the 72. And because the farther you space them apart, the better the efficiency will be, because they're still going to go cross into each other's area. Look at this. If I just put a swine farm there, let's say there's a distance of 7 between them horizontally. I now have enough space to have all of the fields, and I have enough space for the road to go in between them too. Just stick another swine farm right in there. Yeah, I mean, it's not any space lost except for just a little bit here, and this is the most efficient stack you can do. But this is just brainstorming. This tool is for y'all to brainstorm. Let's try a different stack. We lost space with that one. Let's try to use less space. Okay, this is a diagonal vertical stack of 6 that I came up with using this tool, and I want to compare this with the conventional stack of 6, which the farms here are not there. They're missing because I'm using this script in this map so that it's just going to calculate the corn per hour per farm for the farms that I want, and I just want to do one stack at a time. And the script that I have is only for player 1. I didn't take the time to write a script for multiple players. I know it's easy, but I just didn't do it. So anyway, I have this conventional stack here with some buildings that they feed, some consumers, and I also have an alternate stack that's diagonal. It's going to be the other direction, so this stack is bottom left to top right, and this one is bottom right to top left, and they are of similar efficiency, so I wanted to show them. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to eventually show them in the map editor how efficient they are, but I'm going to first import this one into the spreadsheet with the import tool. This map is Optimal Farm Test 3B in R13651. So I'm going to come here and go search for it. So it's going to be pulling in all the buildings on that map from player 1. And again, I'm going to have to get this to work, I'm going to have to get at least something of another player and put it here and save it. I need to make that change so y'all don't have to do that, but I can reuse it now. Okay, I want player 1. We'll be able to see the efficiency of the farms regardless of all the extra buildings. Okay, so here are the farms that are actually there. Obviously it's over here, so I'm going to just highlight around this and then use the zoom to scroll in. But we can see the efficiency of these farms. Now I'm going to right click on the gray margin here, and we're going to see that the expected corn is 76.83. I'm going to rename this sheet to bottom left, top right. Okay, so that we can keep track of that. Now let's get the other diagonal. So I have to delete the farms from here, from this diagonal. Make sure I deleted all 6. I'm going to go put the farms here instead so that this registers from the import tool in the spreadsheet. Then I have 4 swine farms for 6 farms because each swine farm takes a farm and a half roughly. That's the estimate. And these aren't the most efficient farms. They're kind of middle ground, but for a stack it's really good. I've never seen a stack this cheap to build be this efficient. Anyway, I'm going to save the map. Go to the farm efficiency and reload the map. Player 1. I'm going to rename this to bottom right, top left. I'm going to right click on these to zoom in so we can see that this is 77.87 and this one was 76.83. So there's a little bit of a difference there. Almost 1 corn per hour difference between the two. But anyway, we'll keep that in mind. Now we're going to go test them in the map editor and compare to see how close this tool estimates their productivity. Alright, I have farms only on the bottom left to top right, so we're going to test this one, the corn per hour, and compare it to what we have in the spreadsheet. So that's this one. Double click that. Not this one, the other one. Yeah, so this one, it should be around 77. Should be closer to 77 than this. So, and with this trial, seems like it's staying the same. Okay, now it's dropping. Not saying it's great, but it's great for me. Yeah, it's going to very close to 77. And again, this one is saying it's 76.83. And it's a little grayed out in here, so this isn't totally accurate as I've been saying throughout the video. For some reason I did some red zone infraction and I didn't realize it, but it's still very close. Okay, so I removed the farms from this diagonal and I put them on this diagonal. And so for this one, we are expecting 77.87, so something closer to 78. 70 instead of 77.87, the first one is 77.83, and this one is obeying the red zone because again this is not dimmed at all, so we know that the results should be very good approximation. And I don't like when it repeats like this. I like to see it change. Okay, it dropped a little bit but not very much. Yeah, it went up a little bit, but the overall average is pretty close to 77.87. Okay, in this one I have farms on all 3 setups. So what I'm going to do, and they all are in their own towns as they were before, we're going to count the number of pigs that each achieve by an hour and a half. I mean, according to the theory, based on just the raw amount of corn per hour, this one should produce the most pigs. Because in here, that's this one, and that's set 77.87 expected. The other diagonal is 76.83. So at an hour and a half, it's 131 pigs, and this one's 129. So that's true. And then here we come here, and this is 126. Now this is not the default conventional. I should maybe do that one too, but maybe it's good that we've seen this first to see that even the improved is going to be, as we see here, 4 pigs less than the other 2. Well, roughly several pigs. So then let me go back and let me put the fields back here and make sure that those aren't corn already planted, and let's run this test again for an hour and a half. Okay, and of course there's 10 more pigs produced for each setup because 10 of them are stored in the butchers. But anyway, 131 similar, 130 similar than what it was last time, 127. So it's a little bit worse than it was, but not that much far behind. I was expecting it to be another pig behind, so 4 pigs or so, but it's randomness. So if you compare these two, they're roughly the same size. I can't put a building that's 3 tiles in height here. I have to do some special workings to get it to work. But with this setup, no matter what side I look at, I can put buildings of 3 height anywhere perfectly. So that alone will make up for the extra space and few extra row tiles that it costed to make this. If I continue here, if this is on the end of the map, and if you have woodcutters here, because they're on a diagonal, they'll be almost as efficient as this. So that's something to think about. How about I show you one more example where I obey the red zone. And for this map that I'm going to run it with, I'm going to replace the original script of the map with the one that I've been using throughout this video. So I have to, and if you want to do that, you need to make a copy of the map so you don't lose the original map's data, including the script file the author spent lots of time on. But that's all we care about right now, so that's what you have to do manually. So for a script file like this, I do have a text editor that I was working on that is a semi-IDE. I might release it in the future if I just make a few changes that I wanted to and I need to get back in the mood. So right now there's no program associated with script files on my computer, but if you have Notepad++, you can edit it, and then in here you can copy and paste the script that I give you and it's script file. But okay, so I'm going to import this map and player 1. Okay, so we have some farms here, and the farms by these fields are not there. I'm gonna go load that map in the map editor itself so we can take a look. Yeah, there wasn't a farm here, so maybe I should put one. Yeah, I can put a farm here and farms here too, why not? Just need to make sure they all have a farmer. Otherwise it will throw off the average, because the script counts the number of farms and then it divides it by the total amount of corn harvested. That's how it gives you the corn per hour per farm. Okay, so I'm going to save this and reload it into here. So now we have all the farms with the fields, and most of the buildings aren't there, just as this shows. And there's more road, as you can see here in the map. There's still some more road tiles, and they do belong to player 1, but they're not showing up in this drawing because it really looks for buildings, just for farm buildings. Prioritize with farm buildings, so some buildings might be cut off. I don't think it really matters, because if the buildings aren't around where the farms are, what difference does it make? I just have it load in the buildings like this around the farms so you can decide what you want to do with the fields that are near the farms. But anyway, I right click on the margin anywhere here, and we're expecting 80.39 corn per hour, and it looks like I disobeyed the red zone somewhere. There is about a handful of farm tiles that need to be removed. These are the ones that they turned out to be, and I had to manually just right click on these clear buttons and see which tiles were red that previously farm tiles were on. This was one of them, this was another, and these two, and then this one. And that's it. Now it's brightened up. But if I would put on one tile that's red, as I showed you, then I have conditional formatting in Microsoft Excel that will dim it so that it lets me know and lets us know now that I'm giving it to you. So from this point, this farm only has 12 fields. This is the original map, so we're going to make whatever modifications we are doing inside the spreadsheet to this. So maybe what I should do is remove one at a time and press the F11 key here and say terrain wire, so that it kind of gives us a grid-like look so we can easily remove the farm tiles that we need to. So I'll keep that open, and let me delete this sheet and reload it in. So I'm going to go to import. All I have to do is click this button to reload it in. I don't have to browse for it. So again, we're going to remove these one at a time. So this is one of them. So that's this. Then I'm going to remove these 3 here. That's these 3. And then I'm going to come down here to this farm, and it's the bottom right corner of that one, and that will be all of them that I've showed you previously. So that's this one. Okay, so I'm going to save this map. And so from this point, what I'm going to do is use the tool that will increase the efficiency of the farms. And I'm going to apply it. I mean, I can apply it to all of them, but it's going to take too long to redo every single farm step by step with you in the map editor itself, because we want to test the map editor to see how many corn per hour it is. So I'm going to focus on the farms that have fewer than 16 fields, because when a farm has 16 fields, this tool will match the most. It looks like, yeah, if I add a field here in this green, it's okay. I'm going to just simply do that for the farm in here also. So they all have 16. That one has 16. This one has 17. So we need to remove one from here. And when you want to remove one that has 17, remove the farm tile with the largest value. So that could be either one of these. I'm going to remove that one so that the value goes up. And that's the maximum, 81.85. There it is. And this farm really needs help, 12 fields. And what I should do is right click on the margin here and double left click on maximize workspace to maximize the workspace. And clearly the bright greens, we should select those, definitely. And we can use the tool now to select the dark greens that remain in a certain area that will maximize the corn per hour. So I'm going to improve efficiency, and just to move out of the way so you can see what I'm selecting. Out of all of these, what's going to make it increase? 79.63. That's 16 fields. I'm kind of wondering, is this field 4.93? Yeah, that's better than 5.53. 79.63 right now. If I undo that one and put that one instead, 79.88. So just to show you the efficiency tool works, I have it so that it won't select a shared tile, because shared tiles aren't really that accurate anyway. I mean, they're somewhat accurate, but not entirely accurate. But still, that's how I have the tool. I think it's best that way. So I say improve efficiency, and just to overall with all of these tiles and see which ones it selects. It's going to undo all of the tiles and then redo them. So everything we have, we're going to lose and we're going to get it back. So it did choose that one, and instead of this, I guess that one isn't it. This is a 5.53. Yeah, so we could just have that instead, right? It doesn't make a difference. I'm going to double left click here just to zoom to fit, well, for the most part, and look at all the farms to see that they all have 16 or not, and they all do. Yeah, so anyway, I need to make the changes. I'm going to zoom back into this farm and make the changes that we made here to the farm in the map editor. These are all the same. Didn't change that at all. So for this side, I'm just going to fill that in straight up. I'm going to save the map, and just to make sure I did everything right, I'm going to import it in as a separate sheet and see if we have the same exact expected corn per hour per farm average. 81.07. And this one is also 81.07. This one's not maximized, so I can maximize this one. This is a new one, so I really don't need it actually. We already have one just like it, so that's the number we need to focus on. Now when I test this map, it's going to run much slower than other maps. And one thing I need to do is remove the enemy that's going to attack at 1.5 hours. For those who know this map, I'm going to also delete him too, just in case, and him and these buildings, and that will actually let me have 3 hours worth of data to see what we have here. So we have a total of 12 farms and 12 farmers. Good to know that we have an equal amount for each so that our average is not thrown off. Things you got to be careful of. I mean, I could write a script that will place all the farms that are in the spreadsheet into a blank map so that you can test it. But in a way, the spreadsheet tool is pretty much made from the results of scripts. And if you follow the rule, then you don't need to use scripts anymore. That's the point of this whole video. Besides showing you what is efficient, it's all about this tool to replace scripts altogether. So I just don't see the need to do that, even though it's not that difficult for me to do it. 81.07 is what we're expecting. Okay, so 81 even. That's a good start. Okay, we're approaching the 2nd hour, and the enemy didn't come kill me, so I did something right regarding taking them out. 81.08? Like, you've got to be kidding me. 81.08 versus 81.07. The overall average, though, is 81.04, but still, I mean, we can go 1 more hour, but it's clear that the spreadsheet really does match this. And it's no mistake either. I did experiment. I admit that even though I simulated farm efficiency for the single farm, and I figured that the further apart they are apart, the more that's going to hold that value that I recorded, got 180,000 recordings for, will match any number of farms that you have. I had still had to do a little bit of adjusting because, as I've shown already with the puzzle pieces for the far tiles, they have to be that far apart. It's sticking around 81, which is what the spreadsheet showed. As the theme of this whole video has been, whenever there's a red zone and you obey it, then you don't get hurt, no matter how many farms you have. And while I'm at it, I mentioned towards the beginning of the video when I showed these tools that I would talk about these notes later. It's now or never that I talk about these notes, and basically we already know about improved efficiency in making selections. In addition to what I've just shown you about how it works, is it's only going to affect the tiles of the farm that you double clicked on. So for example, I double clicked on this one over here. If I select this entire region and I say okay, first what it's going to do is it's going to delete all of the farm fields that are in that selection, but it will only do it for the farm that we selected. So you see, it's user friendly in that way. So if you double click on this and you just want to be certain that you want to just optimize the farm completely, you can select around this big and it doesn't matter. It's just going to affect that one farm. In short, improve efficiency is only for the farm that you double click on. You have to click on the farm building. You know, if you double click on clear, it will work if you double click on clear or this one. Okay. In the past it didn't work, but I have it so that it doesn't matter which one of these you select, as long as it's one of the actual farm tiles, then it will be applied to that one farm. And now the second note is that remove farms that are between 2 or more farms. Well, we've already seen that that worked. When we had the vertical stack of 6, for example, we saw that, which I could show you now, if I would do this and do this. It doesn't matter if I would left click on this one and say remove, or I would have done, like, say this one and say remove. It's going to remove fields from all of these dark red tiles for you. And another thing is if I clear all the fields like these and it's registering, it's kind of takes a while, clear them. That's enough of them for what I want to show. All I want to show is that place ideal is going to be applied to all the farms, and that just basically means all the bright green are going to have farm fields in them. I don't know if you noticed, but up here there was some free bright green tiles, but they all have fields now too. That's all I have to say about that. Now what I want to get into is alternatives that I found for the conventional vertical stack. This is one of them, and I'll show it in a minute, but I'm first going to show the original stack, just the end result, whatever number it is, for a stack of 10 of them. I'm going to then show how much a pair or 2 of them are by themselves, and then I'm going to show 4. We've already seen 6 is 73, and I might do 8, but I'm going to just talk about how much efficiency is lost when you stack them and alternatives for them and things like that, and give you a little bit of light mathematics to kind of put things into perspective regarding how many pigs you lose when you stack that way, and maybe to encourage you to improve the efficiency. Just make some minor adjustments to it. If the sufficient farm stuff takes up too much space or wastes too much space for your taste, or for a certain location that you can't help it no matter how you feel about it, I understand that. And if you haven't seen this video and even my comment, I was basically trading gold for corn. And as I mentioned in that video, it turns out that if you have a metallurgist running, and he's running well, he has a good supply of coal and gold ore, and he's not hungry or anything, he's going to be equivalent to 2 farms. When you do the trades from what he produces, it's equivalent to 2 farms, and it's going to be produced faster than 2 farms, the most efficient farms. So for example, even though the market isn't in the Shattered Kingdom Mission 9, you have lots of coal and gold available to you, and you don't have much space, at least space for farms, because you can't put fields on coal, right? For a map like this, I'm saying not this particular map because the market's not available, you could trade gold for corn. You have enough gold and coal to make gold itself. You don't need that much gold unless you're training town hall units. Speaking of the beta versions, not R6720, which the town hall's not in, but that will give you a huge leather armor army in a very short period of time, because you can build a metallurgist as soon as the game starts almost. You just have to get that sawmill up to unlock buildings, and instead of waiting 22, 23 minutes or so for harvest, you can have harvest at 14 minutes. And as I just mentioned, metallurgists are as efficient as the most efficient farms. So it's just something to think about when farm efficiency fails on certain maps where you don't have enough space to maybe don't even think about farms at all. It's so inefficient, you might as well maybe trade gold for corn if you can. But anyway, let's look at these vertical stacks some more. And after I show you the vertical stacks, I'm going to also show some pairs and a few triplets that I manually tested in the map editor before I even started making this software, just so you see the actual numbers. And I have several hours in each trial so you can see how it fluctuates and things like that. But okay, 72.5. Let's take a look at a pair of the farms next to each other and see how that does. For each of these tests, I remove the farms, but I keep the farmers in the fields, and it seems to be okay. And that's how I do it. And I've written several scripts this year that I could actually write a script that I don't even need serfs to take them out of the farms. Someone told me that that's possible, so I said, what? And I went and looked at the API, and I learned how to do it. It's not that hard, but this is enough. Okay, at the first hour and a half, we have 75. So when there are fewer, that means it's going to be more efficiency. So we lost 3 corn per hour per farm. That's what this means. So we had 10 farms. If we would space them out correctly and we would keep this efficiency, that is going to be 3 per farm. So that's 30 corn lost per hour. So let's suppose that we really want to prioritize with corn and we can manage to get 10 farms up in the first 25 minutes. That means in 35 minutes, if we do a little bit of stoichiometry, this is the result that we have. So this is going to be equal to 17.5 corn lost in that time. And not considering the market, which is very expensive, but if we just look at the raw production and forget the market altogether, it's going to be, once the momentum is built in the swine farms, it's going to be 2 corn per leather armor. So 17.5 corn lost. Let's round that up to 18. That's going to be 9 leather armor lost. And of course I understand the argument that all you would need is 1 extra farm to make up for that inefficiency. That's how powerful 1 extra building is. If you have a compact space, then you can make up for that if you really need it. But what if there was a way, which this is what this tool is all about, to see if you could build in an alternate way to stick buildings in between the farms for a specific location. So that's, again, what this tool is all about, because we're looking at alternate ways to line up farms. Okay, so this is 75.5 at the second hour. This is not consistent. Every hour is going to be different, and it's going to sometimes go up and sometimes go down. And I'm talking about with different trials, because some trials are just going to be really efficient and other ones are not going to be so efficient. Okay, we just passed the 3rd hour, and that's all I'm going to go with this pair here, but you see it's roughly the same still. So that was a pair. How about we test 4 farms in the conventional way and see what it yields? So it drops to 73.5 just with 1 stack. Wow. If we could space out this pair far enough from an identical pair, then we would maintain the efficiency. That's the idea. We cannot put them like this and maintain efficiency. As you saw, in 35 minutes we lost 18 corn per hour. Or if you would run it for an hour, it would be 30 corn and so forth, right? I can now show some more stacking, but this is stuff that I can't do with my spreadsheet. But these are tests that I did that I thought were pretty good results. So I just tried to modify the conventional stack, and this is with 10 that we saw was 73-ish, 72, around there. Look at that, 77.8. But it's not any taller, and it does cost more stone because the roads are going in. I have more like this to show you, so you can see different results in different shapes and sizes. This is the most efficient one that I think I have like this. I'd say about 77.5 really. Okay, this is another one. It's not any taller, but you have an extra gap in between. This one, as you can see, the left side feeds left buildings, the right side feeds right buildings, but 76.5 solid for the stack of 10. This one's interesting because it only costs 2 more stone per farm, but it's the same dimensions as a conventional, but it's significantly more efficient. I think, according to my notes, it's a little bit more efficient than the one I just showed you, but same otherwise in dimension. Yeah, 76. You can see that this one is 1 tile wider, but still similar to what we saw already, where the left side feeds the left side, the right side feeds the right side. And then it's at 76.5. This is more like the red zone idea, just to see what would happen. And it's not good to go by just 1 hour's worth. That's why I did 6-hour trials, and I did 10 of them because one trial doesn't mean anything. So still 76.5. Unless your town is shifted, there's really no reason to do this. But it would be useful in that sense. But it's good to know that it's the same efficiency. This one's a little bit different, same idea, but I think in my notes it's a tad more efficient than the other one was. Yeah, but here I'm just not seeing it. So this is one of those left side feeds left and right side feeds right, but it's a little bit different. I still made a pattern with it all the way down. It is a pain to do it. It's more efficient than the conventional, but it's the same width, right? There's only one gap in between the farms. This looks very similar to another one that I showed earlier. Yeah, I'm completely disobeying the red zone there. I'm sticking out the one that for sure the guy above him is going to go and meddle with. Okay, so this one is clearly the efficient farms where we can stick buildings in between, and this is what I'm talking about. You know, why not do this? I don't see anything wrong with this because the distance between the buildings is pretty good because the buildings is just like a checkerboard pattern, and look at the efficiency of the farms. It's as best as it can get. 81.5. What more can you ask for? And with these, it doesn't matter how many you stack. You're not going to lose that efficiency. With them at these distances, you're not going to lose it. And it's way more efficient. It's almost 10 corn more per hour per farm than the conventional way. And it's really not that much wider. And there, you can put a road under the swine farm and the butchers here to connect. You don't need to connect from the farms because that's where they want to go. They want to come to these buildings, right? And they're on the way. They're in the main road. This is insane. Now, I've been testing 10, but this is a set of 12 of the conventional. Let's see what it yields. Let's see if it gets any worse because it seems like it lost a few corn per hour just with one stack. What's going to do with another stack after 10? Yeah, no 73 anymore. It's 72 now. Staying at 72. Yeah, staying at 72. Okay, how does it do with 24 farms? 71. So it's not that much of a drop, surprisingly. Okay, it's dropping some, but staying roughly at 71. Okay, yeah, it went down a little bit, but still there. Take a look at 8 farms for the most efficient farms right next to each other. So there's some red zone interference here, so to speak. But let's see what it yields. A stack of 8. It loses efficiency because it is multiple infractions of the red zone. Yeah, not great, right? It's 79.5. That's way better than the conventional if you would stack 8 with the conventional, but it's significant loss in efficiency. Looks like it's dropping slightly. It's probably going to 79. So we just keep 81.5 in mind when I'm doing these. 81.5 is what they would normally do if they were far enough apart. Could be a little bit more. 81.6. That's the best I've seen with them being stacked together. Yeah, this is even worse. I tried to shift them up one and it hurt it. Actually, it didn't even help it. It hurt it. Be around 79 anyway. 80 at best, but I didn't check. Okay, this is shifted up one more. Yeah, not much better. We shift it up again. Costs more stone. That horizontal distance matters. This is as far apart as they can be in that way. Yeah, still not great. Okay, this is a grid of 28 of the most efficient farm. They're significantly far apart. You can easily fit buildings in here. 81. I guess it's alright. Yeah, now it's going up to 81.3. But the average is still 81.14, so the average of the averages. And here are just some random tests that I did in the past. This is another case where it looks like it would be good, but it's really not that much better than other ones. But this is significantly better than this. This was extremely good. And this one actually allows you to put buildings in between them. So this might be desirable. Should you not need to connect the left farm from the left side and the right from the right. So yeah, this is the conventional. I did this one too. Those few fields does make a big difference. This one is very interesting because you could stick the swine farm literally between the two farms. It's a little bit more distance away than if you were to put them connected normally. But the efficiency of these two farms, even one tile apart instead of two like the conventional way is the exact same efficiency as the pair I showed earlier. That's an interesting note. Here's another one. You can fit you can fit that much and the efficiency is still the same, the conventional pair. And this is very compact. Here's another one. And another one. This one, crazy, right? No one would want to build like this. Look at that. You could put buildings of 3 width in here without any problem, and you can put a road through it too. I remember the Dark Lord mentioned on knightsandmerchants.net that he liked to put farm fields like this. He believed in 16 fields, and I do too. And this is about what he would do. The left farm in particular, I think that's how he would have it. He wouldn't have it like the right farm, he'd have it like the left farm is. But not that if they were aligned they would be the same efficiency that they are here, but this is an alternate way to fit buildings in just fine. Here's a more efficient way. So for all these numbers, if you were curious about any of these numbers, we just divide it by 81.85 to get the actual percentage of maximum efficiency. This was rather surprising that when I did it, at least, that I have what looks like the most efficient farm, but it's a few extra fields, it looks like. 2 very efficient farms. This was a bad run, I would say, for them because they're very efficient farms. Yeah, this was more of an accurate run for efficient farms together, just pairs. And this is what it looks like to put the most efficient farm right next to each other. That their field formations are as close as they can be. You can fit a watchtower in there. Efficiency's good. Not great, but it's decent for them being right next to each other. And I have just a few for triplets. Yeah, it's very difficult when you have more farms, right? The 12 hours there. Really, yeah, I think there was inconsistency in the trial, so I was just kind of aggravated, so I just did 12 hours to see that what I was seeing was correct. I don't have numbers for these, but it's reasonable to say that these are going to stack well. This is an idea. If you have these farms and you want to use woodcutters, I didn't do efficiency test with this for the woodcutters. Clearly it'll be okay for the farmers. There's a lot of space for woodcutters. But I've been told that with something like this, for those who play multiplayer regularly, they say that it's great and all that you have this, but they're far apart from their buildings that they supply. Well, okay, that's all I have to say about farm efficiency right now. What I mentioned before was if there's enough demand for it, I can make a video in the future. I can explain the process on how I found the data in the table of 18,000 lines that's in this spreadsheet named farm efficiency. But that's all for now. Thank you for watching and have a nice day.